I never thought my boss would ask me to host his entire family for a week, but that's exactly what happened. And the way he asked, through a text, no heads up, no please, just a casual hey, can your house host my wife, toddler, and dog for a week in January? By the way, if that doesn't work, I'll have the company pay for my hotel. Like I was some kind of backup Airbnb owned. Let me back up a bit. I'm a woman in my late 30s. I've worked for this company for over 8 years. My boss, let's call him Bob, used to be my subordinate. Back when Bob and his wife had their kid, she became a stay-at-home mom, and our CEO, who we'll call Dick because he has one thought that was the most admirable thing in the world. Bob got promoted for being a family man, even though he started showing up later and later to the office, missing more and more work, and when he was actually there, he was often sleeping on the job. I wasn't his direct supervisor at the time, so I let it go. Focused on the people who were actually under me. Then about a year ago, Bob and his family had to move across the country for a family emergency. Another promotion. This time he went from being below me in the hierarchy to being at my level, and he became even more unreachable. Then a couple months ago, Bob got promoted again, this time to the highest level he can reach. Now he outranks me. So imagine my shock when I get that text from him. I'm sitting at my desk, just finished a Zoom call, and I see his name pop up. I open it and it says, "Hey, I know this is last minute, but my wife and toddler and dog need a place to stay for a week in January. You have that spare room, right? Can they crash at your place? If not, I'll ask the company to cover my hotel." I stared at the screen for a full minute, then I laughed out loud. Then I wanted to throw my phone against the wall. I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. 4 years. And last year I was quietly demoted, not officially, but my responsibilities got gutted because I had the audacity to have a baby. That's another story for another day, but the gist is that Dick, our CEO, acted like a spoiled child who got a new sibling. My work performance never changed. But Bob, who barely shows up, gets praised for being such a good dad, and now he wants me to host his family for a week. Like I'm the company innkeeper, I didn't even answer the text right away. I just sat there fuming. I had a meeting with Dick in an hour and I knew Bob would have already mentioned it to him. Dick loves Bob, Bob can do no wrong, so I'd probably get pulled into that meeting and hear, "So Bob says you're hosting his family, that's so generous of you, really shows teamwork." I took an aspirin before the meeting, I needed it. The meeting went exactly as I predicted. Dick brought it up within the first 2 minutes. "Bob mentioned you're letting his family stay with you, that's really great, we appreciate team players." I forced a smile and said, "Actually, I haven't confirmed yet. I need to check with my partner and see if it works with our schedule." Dick waved his hand like it was already decided. "I'm sure you can make it work. Bob's family is in a tough spot. They need a place while he's away on business." Business? He didn't say anything about Bob being away. He said his wife and kid and dog. Where is Bob going? I didn't ask. I just nodded and got out of there as fast as I could. Later that day, I texted Bob back. I kept it neutral. "Hey, I need to talk to my partner about it. Can you send me the exact dates and details?" He replied almost instantly. "January 12th to 1/9, my wife will text you about the dog's food and the toddler's schedule. Thanks, you're a lifesaver." And that was it. No, please, no, if it's not too much trouble. Just you're a lifesaver, like I had already agreed. I haven't even talked to my partner yet, but the pressure is already on. The golden boy wants something and I'm supposed to deliver. That's how it works in this company. Women who have babies get demoted, men who have babies get promoted, and then those same men ask you to host their families while they go on a business trip to God knows where. I told a coworker about it over lunch. She's been here even longer than me. She just shook her head and said, "You need to get out of here. This place is toxic." I know she's right, but I've been here so long and the job market is rough and I have a kid now. I can't just quit. But I'm also not going to be Bob's free hotel. I made up my mind. I'm going to say no, firmly, politely. And if Dick gives me any heat, I'll remind him that I haven't had a raise in 4 years and that my spare room isn't company property. I'm still dreading the conversation, but I've started looking for other jobs just in case. That was one story, but this episode is about more than just workplace nonsense. Sometimes the betrayals we uncover are much closer to home, much more intimate. This next one is from a mother who thought she was helping her son and his girlfriend until she realized her son was lying to everyone. I'm 49 years old and I have a 19-year-old son. His father passed away a couple years ago and my son took it hard. He moved out right after the funeral, said he needed to expand on life, not waste away being depressed. I understood. I gave him space. We talked every day, he visited all the time. After a while, he moved back in with me. That's when he introduced me to Kaylee. Kaylee and I hit it off immediately. She didn't have a mother figure in her life and she latched onto me pretty fast. I was happy to fill that role. She seemed like a good girl, kind, sweet, a little anxious. Actually, extremely anxious. She had major trust issues, but not in a toxic way. She was just nervous about where my son went after work. She'd ask me and I'd tell her he went to his friend Mike's house. They play PlayStation together. I genuinely believed that, so did Kaylee. We had no reason to think otherwise. One night, my son came home to pick up his PS4 to take to Mike's. Kaylee called me shortly after, asking if I could pick up some tampons and Tylenol for her. Her periods were brutal and she lived close, so I was used to late-night pharmacy runs. My son usually gets off work at 4 and is home or at Kaylee's by 5:30 or 6. It was already 6 and he hadn't stopped by to drop off his console. I shot him a text before I left the house. Hey, Kaylee's on her period, so I'm heading out to grab supplies. You okay? He answered while I was driving. I checked it at the store. Yeah, I'm fine. Mike needed help building a shelf he bought, so I'm staying a little later. I sent back a typical mom message. Okay, be safe. I grabbed the tampons and Tylenol, then stopped at a gas station for a soda. As I was walking back to my car, I saw a truck that looked familiar. Very familiar. It was my son's truck parked behind a diner about a block from the store. Not near Mike's house, not building any shelf. I stood there for a moment trying to rationalize. Maybe he forgot something, maybe he stopped for dinner, but the diner was closed, and the truck was parked in the back near the dumpsters like someone was hiding it. I didn't want to believe it, but my gut was screaming. I drove to Mike's house. I parked down the street and watched. No sign of my son's truck. I knocked on the door. Mike answered. Hey, is my son here? Mike looked confused. Oh no, haven't seen him in a couple weeks. Why? I said it was nothing, just a mix-up. I went home. I didn't say anything to Kaylee. I didn't say anything to my son when he came home that night. I just waited. And the next night when he said he was going to Mike's again, I followed him. He didn't go to Mike's. He went to a motel on the outskirts of town. I watched him walk in. I didn't see who he met, but I knew. I took a picture of his truck in the motel parking lot. I went home and cried. The next morning, I called Kaylee and asked her to come over, just us. She could tell something was wrong. I showed her the picture. I told her everything. She broke down. She told me she had suspected for months, but she didn't have proof. She said she loved him. She didn't know what to do. I felt like a monster. I helped break up my own son's relationship, but I also felt like I had no choice. He was cheating on her, lying to her, and I couldn't let her walk into a future full of that. When my son found out Kaylee ended things, he blamed her. He said she was too paranoid, too controlling. He never knew I was the one who exposed him. I kept it secret. I still keep it secret. Our relationship is strained now anyway. He moved out again. He doesn't talk to me much, and I have to live with what I did, but I still think I did the right thing. Kaylee deserved the truth, even if it cost me my son's trust. That was a painful one to tell. A mother choosing truth over her son's comfort. But sometimes the hardest betrayals aren't the ones we see coming from family. They're the ones we watch happening to a friend, knowing we have to speak up or stay silent forever. This next story is about that moment of decision. I'm 30, and I've known Mark since college. We're close, really close. He's one of those overly rational, argumentative types, but he's a good guy. He's been with Laura for about 6 or 7 years since grad school. They got engaged 2 years ago, and the wedding is in a month. I've been watching this like a slow-motion train wreck, and I don't know if I should say anything. For the first few years, Laura seemed fine. Shy, reserved, not really our group's vibe, but she made Mark happy. My only concern was that Mark, with his strong personality, sometimes ran roughshod over her during arguments. But I figured that's their dynamic, not my business. Then Laura started opening up. That was great at first. My girlfriend Julie and Laura became close, and the four of us hung out regularly. But as Laura got more comfortable, some serious issues started surfacing. She's insanely insecure and anxious. Constantly complaining about minor wedding things, Mark's parents' small requests, even the nice things they do for her. I've watched them argue about personal stuff in front of us, and she's happy to air their dirty laundry. She's been cruel to him in our presence too, cutting him down in ways that made me wince. And then there's the big one. They have a fundamental disagreement about a key issue. Think something like whether to have kids. Mark is firm on wanting it, and he needs a partner who will at least consider it. Laura is equally firm on not wanting it. They've known this for years but never resolved it. They just pushed the wedding forward and ignored it. Julie and I talked about it for weeks. Every time we saw them, it got worse. Laura would snap at him for no reason, then cry about how stressed the wedding was. Mark would look at me with this exhausted expression that said, I don't know what to do anymore. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to pull him aside and say, dude, this isn't normal. You're about to marry someone who won't even discuss the biggest decisions with you. You're going to be miserable. But I also knew the risks. He might cut me off, blame me for causing drama, or worse. He might agree with me but marry her anyway, and I'd be the one he resents for planting the doubt. Last weekend at their engagement party, I saw it happen again. Laura's mother made a comment about how many grandchildren she hoped for. Laura froze. Mark tried to change the subject. Laura whispered something harsh to him that I couldn't hear. He turned white. The rest of the night, they barely spoke. After the party, Julie told me she had a similar conversation with Laura. Laura admitted she doesn't actually want kids and feels trapped because Mark's family keeps pressuring them. She said she's hoping Mark will change his mind after they're married. That's a recipe for disaster. I'm still deciding. The wedding is in a month. Do I say something and risk destroying our friendship, or do I stay quiet and watch him make a huge mistake? I haven't decided yet, but I know one thing: if I don't say anything, I'll regret it forever. That kind of dilemma feels huge, but sometimes the truth you uncover is so dark it changes everything you thought you knew. This next story is one of those. I'm 18 and I've been with my boyfriend for almost a year. We met at the mall food court where I worked. He swept me off my feet, dates, compliments, making me feel special. The only weird thing was his mom. He never let me meet her. His parents are divorced, messy split. His dad got full custody. I'd met his dad and his whole paternal family, but when I brought up his mom, he'd get weird. We have a complicated relationship, he'd say. I'll tell you later. 3 months in, I noticed he'd never answer her calls or texts around me. He'd quickly clear her notifications or step into another room to talk, even just texting. I tried to respect his boundaries, but it bothered me. Last week, he spent the night at my place for the first time. I woke up around 3 in the morning from a bad dream, couldn't get back to sleep. I rolled over to grab my phone in the dark, but I accidentally picked up his instead. The screen lit up with a message notification from his mom. I don't know why I looked. Curiosity, I guess. I opened it, and I started reading. The messages were sexual, explicitly sexual, nudes exchanged, hardcore sexting, plans to meet up for sex. I read through their entire conversation, heart pounding. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was dreaming. I put the phone back and lay there staring at the ceiling until dawn. A few days later, I confronted him. He broke down immediately, told me everything. He'd been having sex with his mother since he was 13 years old. Usually once a week, sometimes more. It had been going on through our entire relationship. He never told her he had a girlfriend because he wanted to keep their weekly sessions going. I felt sick, destroyed. I loved this guy, but this wasn't just cheating, this was something beyond words. I didn't scream, I just told him to leave. He cried, begged me to stay, said he was sorry that he was trapped. But I couldn't. I broke up with him that night. My world turned upside down. I told my dad, who called his dad immediately. I found out later that the mom had been reported before, but somehow nothing stuck. After my ex and I broke up, he tried to spin it, said I was crazy, that I made it up. Some of our mutual friends believed him. I lost people I thought were close. But the worst part, a few months later, I got a message from his previous ex-girlfriend. She'd been through the same thing. She said he did the exact same song and dance, told her his mom was abusive, that he was a victim, that's why he couldn't cut contact. He made her feel sorry for him, just like he did with me. She ended up with a restraining order against him after he started stalking her. I still think about that night, accidentally picking up his phone. If my bad dream hadn't woken me up, I might still be with him, still oblivious. That thought makes my skin crawl. Sometimes the darkest truths hide behind the most normal-looking relationships. And sometimes it's a random 3 a.m. accident that shows you everything you didn't want to know. But not every heartbreak comes from a partner. Sometimes it comes from the person who signs your paycheck. This next story is about that kind of betrayal, the kind that makes you wonder if any of it was ever fair. I'm a woman in my 30s and I've been working at this company for years. I used to think I was valued. I led a team, I met every deadline, I held things together when everything was falling apart. But then Bob came along. Bob is the CEO's golden boy, and I'm the CEO's mother. That's how it feels anyway. When Bob and his wife had a baby, she became a stay-at-home mom. The CEO, let's call him Dick because he is one, found that admirable. He promoted Bob. Didn't matter that Bob started showing up later and later to the office, that he was missing more and more work, that when he was in the office he was often sleeping. Bob wasn't my charge, so I let it go. I focused on the people under me. Then Bob and his family had to move across the country for a family emergency. Another promotion. He went from being under me to being at my level. Then a couple months ago, he got promoted again to the highest level he can be. Now he outranks me. I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. I got silently demoted for having the audacity to have a baby, even though my work didn't change. Dick acted like a spoiled older child with a new baby sibling. That's a whole other story, so imagine my surprise when Bob texted me. The message was casual, like he was asking about the weather. Hey, my wife, toddler, and dog need a place to stay for a week in January. Can they crash at your place? If that doesn't work, I'll ask the company to pay for my accommodations. Gobsmacked, utter gobsmacked, I stared at my phone for a solid minute. My dude, I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. I just got demoted for having a baby. And you're asking me to host your family for free while you travel for work? Get the absolute fuck out of here. I didn't reply. I took a deep breath and went to my meeting with Dick. As expected, he brought it up. So I heard Bob's family needs a place to stay. You've got that spare room, right? I said. I don't think that's appropriate. Bob is above me in the hierarchy now. It would be a conflict of interest. Dick waved his hand. Nonsense. You're a good person. It's just for a week. Help out a colleague. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just said, I'll think about it, and left the meeting. I went back to my desk and opened my email. I started drafting a resignation letter. I didn't send it that day, but I started looking for jobs. I'd been underreacting for years, telling myself it was just how things were. But this was a new level. Bob's wife, toddler, and dog in my house while he got a free hotel. While I hadn't seen a raise in 4 years. While I got demoted for being a mother. The comments on my post were brutal. People told me I was underreacting, that my normal meter was broken. They said I should have laughed in his face. They said I was too emotional, probably ovulating. That last comment got a lot of sarcastic replies, but it still stung. Because that's the narrative, isn't it? Women are crazy. Women are emotional. I'd heard it from Bob's friends, from Dick, from half the office. One of my husband's friends once told me he divorced his wife because she was crazy, then we found out he was a cheating pose. I didn't want to be that story. I didn't want to be the crazy woman who couldn't handle a simple request. But this wasn't simple. This was exploitation. I waited 3 days before replying to Bob. I typed and deleted about 20 versions. Finally, I sent, I'm not able to host your family. Please make other arrangements. He replied almost immediately, okay, no problem. I'll ask the company to cover the hotel. No apology, no acknowledgement of how inappropriate it was, just a casual pivot. I forwarded that message to HR. I didn't expect much. I'd learned not to expect much from that company, but I wanted it on record. I wanted someone to know that Bob asked me to house his family, and when I said no, he just asked for a company-funded hotel instead. The next week, Dick called me into his office. He was smiling, that fake smile he uses when he's about to deliver bad news. About that email you sent to HR, he said, we've discussed it and we think you might be happier in a different role, a less demanding role. We're going to move you to a new department. I knew what that meant, another demotion or a lateral move to a dead-end position. I didn't fight it, I just nodded. I started applying for jobs that night. I updated my resume. I reached out to old contacts. I didn't tell anyone at work. I didn't trust a single one of them. The thing is, I'm good at my job. I know I am. I've held together projects that should have fallen apart. I've mentored juniors who went on to get promoted while I stayed still. I've watched Bob nap in his office and get praised as a family man, but I'm done. I'm tired of being the CEO's mother, cleaning up messes, hosting people, asking for nothing. This time when I leave, I'm not going quietly. I'm going to tell everyone who will listen about the golden boy who asked me to house his family while he got a free vacation. About the boss who smiled while demoting me for having a child. About the culture that calls women crazy for standing up for themselves. I haven't found a new job yet, but I will. And when I do, I'm going to walk into Dick's office, hand him my resignation and smile, just like he smiled at me, because sometimes the best revenge is refusing to be the mother anymore, but not all betrayals come from the workplace. Sometimes they hit closer to home, and sometimes you're the one who has to pull the trigger, even when it feels like it'll shatter everything. I'm a 49-year-old mother. My son just turned 19 when his biological father passed away. It was sudden, ugly, the kind of loss that twists a family inside out. He told me he needed space, wanted to expand on life, that he was afraid he'd waste it being depressed over someone so important. I let him go. We talked every day, he visited all the time. After a while, he moved back in with me. That's when he introduced me to Kaylee. Kaylee was sweet, anxious, lacked a mother in her life. She latched onto me quick and I didn't mind. Off the bat, I noticed she was extremely paranoid, had extreme trust issues, but she wasn't toxic or manipulative, she just needed reassurance. She'd ask me about my son's whereabouts and I'd answer honestly. He went to his friend Mike's house, they hang out to play PlayStation. And we both believed that. One night, Kaylee called me. She was on her period, bad cramps, needed tampons and Tylenol. She lived close, her periods were always intense, and I'd run out for her before. My son had come home earlier to pick up his PS4 so he could hang out with Mike. He usually got off work at 4, was at Kaylee's by 5:30 or 6 at the latest. By 6, he still hadn't swung by to drop off the PS4, so I shot him a text before I left the house. Hey, Kaylee is on her period, so I'm heading out to grab supplies. You okay? I was driving when he replied. I checked it at the store. Yeah, I'm fine. Mike needed help building a shelf he bought, so I'm staying a little later. I sent back something like, okay, be safe. All that mother stuff. I grabbed the tampons and Tylenol, paid, got back in the car. But instead of heading straight to Kaylee's, I decided to swing by Mike's house. It was on the way, barely a detour, and I figured I'd drop off a couple of the energy drinks my son liked. I hadn't told him I was coming. I pulled up to Mike's place. His truck wasn't in the driveway, but my son's car was. I walked up to the front door, rang the bell, no answer. I rang again. Then I heard a muffled voice inside, a giggle that wasn't a guy's. My stomach dropped. I used my spare key. Mike had given me one years ago for emergencies when the boys were younger. I opened the door. The living room was empty, but I heard sounds from the bedroom. I walked toward it, heart pounding. The door was cracked open. I saw my son on the bed with a girl I didn't recognize. They were both half naked. He was on top of her, her legs wrapped around his waist. I didn't scream, I just said, get dressed, both of you. He froze, the girl screamed. My son scrambled off, face white, eyes wide. I turned around and walked back to the living room, waited for them to come out. He came out first, shirt untucked, zipper half done. The girl was crying in the bedroom. I said, you told me you were helping Mike build a shelf. He couldn't look at me. Mom, it's not what it looks like. Mike's truck isn't here. Who is she? He started crying, begging me not to tell Kaylee. He said it was a mistake, that he loved Kaylee, that he'd end it with this other girl. He promised he'd change. I didn't say anything. I just drove straight to Kaylee's apartment. She was curled up on the couch in pain, waiting for her tampons. I handed her the bag. She asked, did you see son's name? He said he'd be here by now. I couldn't lie. I said, he's not coming. He's with another girl. I saw them. Her face crumpled. She started sobbing, shaking, asking how I knew. I told her everything, the shelf lie, the stop at Mike's empty house, what I walked in on. She screamed and cried and threw a pillow at the wall. I held her until she stopped. She broke up with him that night. My son called me furious, screaming that I ruined his relationship. He said he hated me. He said I was a nosy mother, a controlling bitch. He moved out again, this time to his friend's house. He stopped talking to me for months. Kaylee and I still talk sometimes. She's doing better now, in therapy, dating a guy who doesn't lie about shelves. My son never apologized. He still blames me for everything. He's dating that other girl now, the one I saw in Mike's bed. He thinks I'm the villain. But I know what I saw. And I'd rather be the villain who told the truth than the mother who stood by and let it happen. That kind of discovery changes you. But what do you do when you see a friend about to walk into a disaster? Do you say something or do you stay quiet, hoping it all works out? I'm a 30-year-old woman. I've known my friend Mark since college. We're close, hang out regularly. He's been with his fiancée Laura for about 6 or 7 years, engaged for 2. The wedding is in a month. For the first few years, I had zero problems with Laura. She seemed shy, reserved. I thought she and Mark balanced each other out. He's loud, argumentative, overly intellectual. She was quiet. It seemed fine. But over the last 2 or 3 years, Laura opened up. At first, it was great. My girlfriend Julie and Laura got close. The 4 of us went out regularly. Then we started noticing cracks. Laura is insanely insecure and anxious. She complains constantly about minor wedding things, Mark's parents' small requests, even nice things they do for her. She airs their dirty laundry in public, argues with him about personal stuff when other people are around, and she's been cruel to him in front of us. The real deal breaker, they have a fundamental disagreement about something huge. I'm not sure exactly what, but from bits and pieces, I think it's about whether to have kids. Mark is firmly on the yes side. He needs a partner who will at least consider it. Laura, she seems dead set against. I've overheard her say things like, I'm not ruining my body, and if he wanted kids, he should have said something earlier. But he did say something. He's always said he wanted kids, she just didn't listen. Last week, Julie and I were at their place for dinner. Laura got drunk, started tearing into Mark about how controlling he is, how he never lets her have fun. Mark tried to steer the conversation away, but she kept pushing. Finally, she blurted out, I want to explore an open relationship, and he won't even consider it. Mark went quiet. I didn't know what to say. Laura then said, see, he's so closed-minded, he just wants to trap me in a boring marriage. I left that dinner feeling sick. Mark is my friend, he's a good guy. He deserves someone who wants the same future he does. But do I have the right to say something? It's a month before the wedding. They've already paid for the venue, the caterer, the dress. If I tell Mark what I saw and heard, I might destroy their relationship. But if I don't, he might marry someone who doesn't want the same life, who'll eventually resent him or cheat on him. I posted about it online, asking for advice. Most people said I should stay out of it. Not your circus, not your monkeys. But some said I should talk to him as a friend, not to sabotage, but to check in. Hey, are you really sure about this? That kind of thing. I haven't decided yet. The wedding is in 4 weeks. I'm invited. I'm supposed to be a bridesmaid. Every time Laura posts about the wedding on social media, I cringe. She seems so happy, so sure, but I've seen the cracks. Tonight, I called Mark. We talked about random stuff, work, a movie we both watched. At the end, I said, hey, you and Laura okay? You seemed off at dinner. He hesitated. Then he said, we're fine. Every couple has disagreements. I didn't push, but I feel like I'm failing him by staying quiet. I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I'll write him a letter. Maybe I'll just be there for him after the disaster. But I know one thing, if I were in his shoes, I'd want someone to tell me the truth, even if it hurts. Even if it's a month before the wedding, because the alternative is a lifetime of regret. And I've seen enough of those to know they're the worst kind. I am the one they call the CEO's mother. That's not a title I wanted, but it's what Dick, our CEO, actually named Richard, but we all call him Dick because he is one started calling me after I had my baby. I'm 42, worked at this company for over a decade. I've been a department head, managed teams, hit every target. But the second I took maternity leave, everything shifted. I came back to a silent demotion, no title change, but my responsibilities were gutted, my projects handed to people with less experience. And Dick, he promoted Bob. Bob was my peer once. Then he had a kid, his wife became a SAHM, and Dick practically worshipped him. That's what a real family man looks like, he'd say in meetings. Bob started showing up late, sleeping at his desk, missing deadlines. I covered for him because I'm not a monster, but he kept climbing. Now he outranks me. And 2 months ago, he got promoted to the highest level he can reach. So I'm sitting at my desk last Tuesday, catching up on emails when my phone buzzes. A text from Bob. I haven't spoken to him in months. He's been across the country since last year, another promotion, another relocation. The text says, hey, we have a family emergency and need to be in town next week for an extended stay. Would you be able to house my wife, toddler, and dog for the week? If not, I can ask the company to pay for accommodations. I stared at the screen for a full minute, gobsmacked, utter gobsmacked. I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. I got silently demoted for having a baby. And Bob, who got promoted for being a good dad while actually being a terrible employee, is asking me to host his family for free, as if I'm his personal hotel. I didn't respond. I put the phone face down and went to take an aspirin. I had a meeting with Dick in an hour and I knew he'd bring it up. He always backed Bob. Sure enough, I walk into his office and he says, so Bob tells me you're helping out his family next week. Great team spirit. I said, I haven't agreed to anything. Dick frowned. I thought you two worked it out. He said you were checking your schedule. He texted me asking to house his wife and toddler and dog for a week. I didn't respond. Dick leaned back. Look, Bob's family is going through a tough time. His wife's mother is in the hospital. They need a place to stay. You have a spare room, right? I wanted to scream. Yes, I have a spare room. I have a spare room because my kid is still in a crib in my bedroom. I have a spare room that I was planning to turn into a nursery once I saved enough for renovations, which I can't afford because I haven't had a raise in 4 years. But I said, I have a baby, my house is not set up for a toddler and a dog, and I'm not a hotel. Dick's face hardened. I'm not asking, I'm telling, this is a chance to show you're a team player. I didn't say anything else. I walked out, got to my desk, and started updating my resume. I'd been looking for a new job for months, but I had a kid, I needed stability. I thought I could tough it out, but this was too much. That night I posted on my throwaway account ranting. People told me I was underreacting. They told me to stand my ground. One comment said, the problem with staying in toxic jobs too long is your normal meter breaks. They were right, my normal meter was shattered. The next morning I sent an email to Bob. I'm unable to host your family, I have a newborn and my home is not suitable. I wish your mother-in-law a speedy recovery. I CC'd Dick, professional firm. Bob replied within an hour, copying Dick. Okay, understood, I'll book a hotel and expense it, thanks anyway. Dick didn't respond to me directly, but at the end of the day I got an invite to a meeting titled Performance Review. I knew what that meant. I'd been flagged as not a team player. I went in, sat across from Dick and HR. They told me my attitude was concerning, that I needed to be more supportive of colleagues in crisis. I didn't scream. I said, I have a newborn, I'm working full-time, I haven't had a raise in 4 years. And you're telling me I need to be more supportive of the guy who got 3 promotions in 2 years while sleeping at his desk. The HR woman's face went blank. Dick stood up. This meeting is over. I went back to my desk and applied to 3 jobs. That was 2 weeks ago. Yesterday I got an interview. It's at a competitor, better pay, better culture. If I get it, I'm out and I'll never look back. But the whole thing made me think about how easy it is to get trapped. You tell yourself it's temporary, you tell yourself you're overreacting, but you're not. You're not overreacting when your boss asks you to host his golden boy's family for free. You're not overreacting when you've been demoted for having a baby. You're not overreacting when your normal meter is screaming that something is wrong. I'm not hosting Bob's family, I'm not being a team player, I'm getting out. Different story now, different kind of discovery. I'm a 19-year-old girl, met my boyfriend at the mall food court where I worked. He was cute, funny, took me on dates, made me feel special. We were together almost a year. The only weird thing, he would never let me meet his mom. His parents were divorced, messy, his dad had full custody. He lived with his dad, saw his mom every other weekend and 6 weeks in the summer, but anytime I brought her up, he'd get weird. We have a complicated relationship, he'd say. I'll tell you later. About 3 months in, I noticed he never answered her calls or texts around me. He'd step into another room to talk to her, even just to text. I tried to respect his boundaries, I didn't push. Then he spent the night at my place for the first time. I woke up around 3 a.m. from a bad dream, couldn't get back to sleep. I reached for my phone in the dark, grabbed his by accident. The screen lit up, a message from his mom. I didn't mean to snoop, but there it was. I opened the thread. Nudes, sexting, plans to meet up for sex, conversations going back years. I read through them in disbelief, heart pounding, thinking it had to be a dream, but it was real. I confronted him a few days later. He broke down immediately, told me he'd been having sex with his mother since he was 13, once a week, sometimes more. They'd been doing it our entire relationship. He never told her he had a girlfriend because he wanted to keep their weekly sessions going. I felt sick. I threw up. He tried to hug me and I shoved him away. He said it wasn't his fault that she'd started it, that he was a victim too, but he also said he loved it, that he didn't want to stop, that he'd only stop if I made him. I loved him, but I couldn't unread those messages. I called his dad. His dad already knew. He said he'd caught them years ago, pressed charges, got full custody, but his son kept sneaking over. He said he'd tried therapy, but nothing worked. I broke up with him. He cried, begged, threatened self-harm. I called the police for a wellness check, then blocked him. I moved my schedule at the food court so I wouldn't run into him. I told my manager he was harassing me. It's been 6 months. I'm in therapy now. I still have nightmares. I still feel guilty for grabbing his phone, but I know I didn't cause this. I just happened to find out some truths are too heavy to carry alone, but they're still truths, and you can't build a life on lies. That story reminded me of another time I had to decide whether to speak up or stay quiet. This one was about my friend Mark. We've known each other since college, close as siblings. I'm a 30-year-old woman, Mark is the same age, and he was engaged to Laura 27. They'd been together since grad school, 6 or 7 years, engaged for 2. The wedding was a month away. For the first few years, I had 0 problems with Laura. She was shy, reserved, a little quiet for our loud friend group, but she seemed fine. If anything, I worried that Mark, who was overly rational, argumentative, a strong personality, sometimes steamrolled her. But I figured that was their dynamic. Then Laura started opening up. Around year 4 of the relationship, she began hanging out with my girlfriend Julie. The 4 of us would go out regularly, and it was actually great at first. But over the last 2 or 3 years, things shifted. Julie and I started noticing cracks. Laura was insanely insecure and anxious. She complained constantly about minor wedding stuff. Mark's parents asked if they could invite a few extra cousins, and Laura spent a whole dinner ranting about how they were trying to take over. She said his mom's offer to help with the cake was condescending. She called his dad's speech draft manipulative. Mark would sit there looking at his plate, not defending them, just nodding. I watched them argue about personal stuff in front of us. His sex drive, her weight, his friendship with a female coworker. She'd air their dirty laundry like it was nothing. He'd ask her to stop and she'd say, "Why are you ashamed of me?" right there at the dinner table. The really big thing, though, was a fundamental disagreement. They had a key issue they couldn't resolve. For them, it was whether to have kids. Mark was firm, he wanted a family, he wanted to be a dad, he needed a partner who would at least consider it. Laura was equally firm, she didn't want kids, never had, never would, but she told him early on that she was open to changing her mind. That's what he clung to. Now, 3 years later, she was adamant, and he was devastated. I saw him one night after a particularly bad fight. He was at my place drinking beer, telling me he loved her but didn't know if they could stay together. He was crying. I told him he needed to have an honest conversation before the wedding. He said he'd tried. She'd accuse him of trying to change her, and then she'd start crying about how everyone always leaves her, and he'd feel guilty and drop it. A week later, Julie and I were at a coffee shop. Julie told me Laura had been sending her weird messages, asking if Mark was seeing someone else, if I was too close to him. She was paranoid. I realized then that Laura was never going to change. She wasn't shy, she was controlling. She isolated Mark from his family and friends through guilt and accusations, and he couldn't see it. I decided I had to say something, not to Laura but to Mark. I asked him to meet me for lunch. I told him as gently as I could that I was worried. I brought up the kids thing, the public fights, the paranoia. He listened. He looked tired. He said, "I know, but I love her. And the wedding is in 3 weeks. I can't back out now." I said, "You can, it'll be a mess, but it's a smaller mess than a divorce." He didn't say anything. He paid for lunch and left. The wedding happened. I went. I stood in the crowd and watched them say vows. Laura smiled and cried. Mark looked numb. They've been married for 2 years now. I hear from mutual friends that they're miserable. She monitors his phone. He works late to avoid coming home. They're in couples therapy. No kids, obviously. I don't talk to Mark as much anymore. He's distant. Maybe he resents me for trying to intervene. Maybe he resents himself for not listening. I still wonder if I should have said more, or if I should have stayed quiet altogether. But I know one thing, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And if your gut tells you a wedding is a mistake, you owe it to your friend to speak up even if they hate you for it. And then there's the story of how I broke up my own son's relationship without him ever knowing it was me. That one still keeps me up at night. I'm 49, a mother of one. My son, 19, moved out pretty soon after his biological father passed away. He told me he needed to expand on life, that he was scared he would waste it being depressed. I understood. I gave him space, but we talked daily. He visited all the time. After a few months living alone, he moved back home. That's when he introduced me to Kaylee, a sweet girl who lacked a mother figure. I became that for her. We bonded immediately. But Kaylee was extremely paranoid. She had trust issues, not toxic or manipulative, just anxious. She'd ask me where my son was after work. I'd say he went to his friend Mike's house. They play PlayStation together. She'd accept that. I believed it too. I had no reason to think otherwise. One night, my son came home to pick up his PS4 to hang out with Mike. Kaylee texted me asking if I could pick up tampons and Tylenol for her. She lived close and her periods were always brutal. I was used to late-night supply runs. My son gets out of work at 4, usually home by 5:30 or 6. That night it was 6 and he hadn't stopped by Kaylee's. I shot him a text as I left the house. "Hey, Kaylee is on her period. I'm heading out for supplies. You okay?" He answered while I was driving. I checked it at the store. It said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Mike needed help building a shelf, so I'm staying a little later. I replied, "Okay, be safe." I drove home, dropped off the supplies to Kaylee and went to bed, but something gnawed at me. Mike wasn't the type to build shelves. Mike was the type to order pizza and play video games. I checked my son's location on our family app. He had it on for emergencies. It showed him at an address downtown, not Mike's. My stomach dropped. I didn't confront him that night. I waited. Over the next week, I checked his location a few more times when he said he was at Mike's. He was at that same downtown address every time. I looked up the address. It was an apartment complex. I drove past one evening and saw his car parked outside. I didn't see Mike's car anywhere. I called Kaylee the next day and asked if she was free for lunch. We met at a cafe. I told her I had found something out, but I needed her to keep it between us. I showed her the location history on my phone. She started crying. She said she knew something was wrong but thought it was her paranoia. She asked me what she should do. I could have told my son I knew. I could have confronted him. But I thought about what that would do, him getting defensive, blaming Kaylee, me getting caught in the middle. So I told Kaylee to confront him herself, but to say she found the location on his phone, not mine. She did that night. He admitted to seeing another girl, some coworker. Kaylee broke up with him on the spot. My son was devastated. He came home crying, wondering how she knew, accusing her of being crazy. I comforted him. I said, "Sometimes people find out the truth." He never connected it to me. A month later, he had a new girlfriend. He never learned. I don't know if I did the right thing. I broke up a relationship my son was happy in, but he was cheating. He was lying. Kaylee deserved better. And my son, he needed to learn consequences. He still hasn't learned, though. A year later, he cheated on the next girl too, but that's his father's legacy, I guess. Some cycles are hard to break. I still think about Kaylee sometimes. She sent me a text after the breakup, thanking me for being a mother to her. I never responded. What could I say? I destroyed your relationship and lied about it. So I just let her go, and I carried that secret with me. The next story is one I never thought I'd tell anyone, but here goes. I was 18 working at a mall food court when this guy walks up to my register and smiles. He was cute, funny, and we hit it off immediately. After a month, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. Our relationship was great. He took me on dates, texted me good morning, made me feel special. The only weird thing, he never let me meet his mom. His parents were divorced, messy split. His dad had full custody. I met his dad and his whole paternal family. They were nice, normal, but when I brought up his mom, he'd get weird. We have a complicated relationship, he'd say, or I'll tell you later. I figured maybe she was abusive or something. I tried to respect his boundaries, but after 3 months, I noticed he'd never answer her calls or texts around me. He'd step into another room to text her or clear his notifications fast. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then he spent the night at my place for the first time. I woke up at 3 a.m. from a nightmare, couldn't sleep. I rolled over to grab my phone in the dark, but I accidentally picked up his instead. The screen lit up with a message from his mom. I didn't mean to snoop, but I saw the preview. It was sexual, so I read more. I sat there in the dark, scrolling through months of messages, nudes, sexting, planning meetups for sex. They had a schedule once a week, sometimes more. They'd been doing this since he was 1-3, and he never told her he had a girlfriend because he wanted to keep their sessions going. I put the phone back. I didn't sleep. I spent the next few days in a daze trying to convince myself it was a dream. But I knew it was, so I confronted him. He broke down immediately, crying, saying he was sorry, telling me everything. He said his mom had been sexually abusing him since he was 1-3, that he didn't know how to stop. That he loved me and he'd cut her off if I gave him a chance. I felt sick. I wanted to believe him. He looked so broken, but then something shifted. A few days later, he started changing the story. He told me his mother was dead. He said he had a restraining order against her, that she was mentally ill and that I was being manipulated by his ex who spread rumors. He said I was the one who was crazy for looking through his phone. I didn't scream. I just left. I blocked him on everything. I told my friends, but they didn't believe me. They said it sounded made up. But I know what I saw. I still have nightmares about those texts. I never reported it. I was 18, scared, and I just wanted to forget. But I think about it sometimes, about him, about his mom, and I wonder how many other girls he did that to. After that, I thought I'd seen the worst of what people can hide. But then my job taught me a whole new lesson about entitlement. I work for a company where the CEO, we'll call him Dick, has a golden boy named Bob. Bob has a wife and a kid, and when his wife became a SAHM, Dick thought that was the greatest thing ever. He promoted Bob, gave him raises, let him come in late and leave early. Meanwhile, I'm the one who actually does the work. I've been there for years, but I haven't gotten a raise in 4 years. And when I had a baby, Dick silently demoted me. No change in duties, just a title change. Because apparently having a baby makes you less valuable, but having one makes you a hero if you're a man. Bob climbed the ladder until he outranked me. And then he texted me one day, "Hey, I need you to house my wife, toddler, and dog for a week in January. I'll see if the company can pay for my hotel if that doesn't work." Like he was doing me a favor. I was gobsmacked. I stared at the message. He wanted me to host his entire family so he could go on a work trip, and he thought of paying for his own accommodations only as an afterthought. I didn't even respond. Then I had a meeting with Dick. He brought it up. "Bob mentioned you might be able to help out with his family," he said, smiling like it was a reasonable request. I said, "I'm not a hotel. I have my own family. I have a baby." He waved his hand. "Bob's a valuable employee. We need him on this trip." "And you have extra space, don't you?" I said. "I have a spare room for guests, but not a live-in nanny situation." He got quiet. Then he said, I've been hearing some concerns about your attitude lately." That was when I started looking for a new job. I updated my resume, sent out applications, and within 3 weeks I had an offer. Better pay, better title, remote work. I gave my 2 weeks notice. Dick was shocked. "Why are you leaving?" he asked. I said, "Because I'm not a hotel and I'm not your mom." Bob didn't speak to me after that, but I heard from a coworker that he ended up having to pay for a dog kennel and a hotel for his family. He was furious, but I was already gone. I don't regret leaving. I regret staying as long as I did. I think about Kaylee, about Mark, about the girlfriend who found those texts. We all have stories we carry. And sometimes the only thing we can do is walk away. I thought I was done with people's nonsense. But then there was Mark. I've known Mark since college. We were close, hung out all the time. He's the type who argues about everything because he thinks he's always right, but he's a good guy. Loyal. When he got engaged to Laura, I was happy for him. She was shy, reserved, seemed like a good match. For years, I had zero issues with her. If anything, I worried Mark steamrolled her with his personality. Then Laura started opening up. At first, it was great. She and my girlfriend Julie became close. We'd do double dates, group hangs. But after a while, Julie started pulling me aside. "Something's off," she said. I didn't see it at first. Then we went to a dinner party with some other friends. Laura spent 20 minutes complaining about Mark's parents. They had offered to pay for the wedding centerpieces, and she was furious because they picked the wrong flowers. She said it loudly across the table. Mark tried to change the subject. She snapped at him. "Don't tell me to calm down. You never defend me." I saw Mark's face. He looked embarrassed. He looked small. Later that week, Julie told me Laura had confessed that she and Mark had a huge fight about kids. Mark wanted them. Laura didn't. She said she'd consider it, but only if they moved to a different state first. And she made him promise not to tell anyone. Julie asked me, should we say something? "The wedding is in a month." I didn't know. I called Mark and asked if we could grab a beer. We met at a dive bar, the kind we used to go to in college. I asked him straight up, "Are you sure about Laura?" He looked tired. "What do you mean?" I told him what I'd seen. The complaining, the airing dirty laundry, the fundamental disagreement about kids. I said, "That's not something you compromise on. You either want them or you don't." He got defensive, said I didn't know her like he did. Said she was just stressed about the wedding. But then he admitted they'd been fighting more. He said he loved her, but sometimes he wondered if he was making a mistake. I didn't tell him what to do. I just said, think about it, really think, before you sign the papers. A week later, he called me. He'd found a journal Laura kept. She wrote about how she didn't want kids ever and how she planned to change his mind after they were married. She also wrote about how she thought his friends were a bad influence. She wrote about me by name, said I was poisoning him against her. Mark was shaking. He said, I called off the wedding. I felt relief but also guilt. I'd planted the seed. He told his parents and they supported him. Laura's family blamed me. She sent me a long text saying I ruined her life. I didn't respond. A few months later, Mark started dating someone new. He seems happier now, but I still wonder, was I right to say something or did I just project my own issues onto their relationship? I guess we all have to live with the choices we make. Some cycles are hard to break, but sometimes walking away or speaking up is the only way to break them.